Yeah, it's going to bring on a collapse. I call it the Greater Depression. It's going to be much worse, much longer lasting, and much different than the unpleasantness of 1929 to 1946. And so, based on what you said, yeah, maybe as Lenin said, the worse it gets, the better it gets.
Happy Friday, folks. And here is the first interview I did in Buenos Aires on my recent trip, and it's with the legendary Doug Casey. So he had a best-selling book for over half a year, nearly half a century ago, on crisis investing. He's a highly successful investor. He has a large estate in Argentina and other properties around the world. But the key thing is he has great advice on how to live, how to speculate, how to invest, and a lot actually on the recent US election and a lot of the geopolitics in the world and mass migration as well. So it's a great interview. I did a sit down in his apartment in Buenos Aires with Tom from Palisades Gold, and we interviewed him together. So really enjoyable conversation. He's a great guy.
Well, here we are in Buenos Aires, okay? And I spend most of the year in between here and Uruguay. I just got back from a month's trip through the Orient, through Thailand and Malaysia and Sri Lanka. So I think travel broadens the mind. I don't think most Americans travel nearly enough, quite frankly. The whole world, and certainly most Americans, think the world revolves around the United States. I don't call it America anymore because as far as I'm concerned, America is fading away. We're just left with the United States, which is just another of 200 political entities in the world. But Americans are only 4% of the world's population. But I think we punch way above our weight. But people ought to travel more. They should spend less time on their iPhone. And they should read more. I don't know, get more exercise. Now, these are general comments that the category of good advice that I think anybody can give you. So I'm not sure I have too much to contribute in that respect.
That's absolutely fair, Doug. But I think your voice in this arena holds a lot of weight. So maybe, or hopefully, there are people that take that to heart.
Yeah, well, get less involved in politics too, because politics is poison. It really is.
Well, I might, Doug, actually, just for my own part, I've been involved in a battle somewhat with all the things that happened in the last few years. But I'm increasingly focusing on this concept, like you were in the Maverick conference there on the panel, the Plan B concept, the best place to have a backup. I have 5 children in Ireland. I'm very rooted there, and I tend to stand and fight whatever's coming. But on the idea of the best place to be, with your knowledge of the headwinds in the world and what's happening in the coming years, where are you thinking as the best places to be?
Well, a little bit of it's process of elimination. And Europe is totally screwed as far as I'm concerned. The population of Europe, certainly Western Europe, has been totally brainwashed by socialism. They believe all these socialist concepts, so it's pretty hopeless from that point of view. It's on the front lines of whatever World War III is going to look like. That's not good. I don't want to be anywhere near World War III. And of course, it's suffered from massive migration from Africa and the Middle East and other places, drawn in by the welfare benefits. You get free food, you get free clothing, you get a free place to live. And that's going to continue. I mean, if I was a young Nigerian, I'd get the hell out of Lagos and get to Europe and get on the gravy train. Now, Europe is basically screwed, and I can't see how it's going to turn around. So, process of elimination. Love Europe, love the old buildings, but it's not on my dance card. And I've spent a lot of time in Africa, but Africa's not a good place for white people anymore, I'm afraid. Still a wonderful place if you're a young man who wants to make his fortune. Yeah, I recommend Africa for that, but It's not a bolt hole to live, so forget about that. Love Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Thailand's, if I wasn't here in Argentina and Uruguay, which is just across the river, I would probably be in Thailand. But if you live in Thailand, you're never going to be a Thai. You can forget about that. But, well, that's a good thing and a bad thing. So that leaves us basically, well, Australia and New Zealand. They've been totally overcome by wokeism in recent years. I used to live in New Zealand, loved it, but I'm not sure it's what it even used to be then, because I was there after the Roger Douglas Revolution. New Zealand was one of the first self-declared socialist countries in the world. And it had been going downhill, downhill, downhill for 100 years. And finally, there was a left-wing politician named Roger Douglas that decided, wait a minute, this is stupid, because all the young people, anybody with enough for an air ticket to Los Angeles or London was getting the hell out. So the place was reformed and it's boomed, but I'm afraid it's slip-sliding backwards again. And Australia's kind of turning into a police state. It'll probably be the land of the road warrior in the future. All right, so what are we left with? We're left with Latin America. Central America, not a big... I've been to 155 countries, and I've lived in, I guess, 12 at this point, and been to most of those countries numerous times. Central America, land of the Frito Bandito, not too interested. Northern half of South America, lots of problems. All right, bottom line, where do you go? I think the Southern Cone, frankly. That's Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and for that matter, the southern part of Brazil, because Brazil is one of these places that's not really one country at all. It's like an agglomeration. So that's where we are right now, and I think that here in the Southern Cone is going to be pretty much out of harm's way. Wasn't involved in World Wars I or II, and especially with the revolution that's ongoing with the election of Javier Milei a year ago, not quite a year ago. I think you're going to wind up getting thousands of North Americans and Europeans that are going to be coming here because Argentina used to be one of the 3 or 4 or 5 most prosperous countries in the world 100 years ago. I think Argentina could once again become one of the very most prosperous and freest countries in the world, assuming Milei succeeds over the next 3 years. So that's my answer. I think Argentina, I was a relatively early adopter. I think it's your best bet if you want to get a bolt hole or relocate.
Wow, no, that's so appreciated. And I first time really down this whole region myself in Buenos Aires, I was astonished how European it feels.
It's more European than Europe.
Yeah, for us in Ireland or in the West, you hear, you hear all the negative stuff about this part of the world. You make assumptions as a result, and then you actually come here and it's like, my God. Apparently, either yourself or one of the people at the Mavericks conference said it's around 90% essentially European extraction.
That's correct. That's right. So
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And it's Spaniards, Italians, British, Irish, Germans, French. I mean, the building we're in here right now is a French building. Yeah, no question about it. What do they call in Argentine? There's a joke. It's in Argentine is an Italian who speaks Spanish but thinks he's British.
Perfect.
So, Doug, what would make you change your mind on any of this Southern Cone, whether it be Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay?
Well, these countries are famous for political upsets and having revolutions, but I've been hanging out in Argentina on and off for about 40 years, and I've been through 2 runaway inflations where, in order to go out on the street with walking around money, you needed a stack of bills like this, and I kid you not. But it remains civilized and proper, so the culture is nice. And even with all the political stupidities, the culture hasn't changed. It's, I guess one of the reasons I came here early on is because I was very into polo, and this is the polo capital of the world. So that's part of the culture. Ranching is part of the culture. Wide open spaces where there's just no people, and you can drive for hours and not see another human being once you're out of Buenos Aires and Cordoba and Rosario. There's just basically no people for hours and hours in all directions. It's great. I like that.
And yeah, some of the figures actually, the guys, yourself and others went through, like 17 was the population density, extremely low, massive capacity for food security, and great arable land. And there was another thing, someone, again, it may have been yourself, made the point that because Argentina is strapped for cash in a sense, they have not developed a big bureaucratic state, the armies and all of this stuff in America that scares the crap out of people.
Yeah, that was a good thing about the Falklands War, which was a bad thing, but it totally shattered the faith of the average Argentine in the military. And the Argentine army is, well, you don't see or hear about it. It's just a tiny shell. And the Argentine Navy, there's a famous picture from about 10 years ago of an Argentine destroyer, World War II vintage, because they don't have any new boats, sinking at the dock, heeled over at a 45-degree angle. So, and because of during the military dictatorship that was here during the 80s, where there was a lot of nastiness. I mean, there were probably about, estimates vary, 10,000, 20,000 people. Some people say 40,000. I don't credit that. But say 10,000 people were disappeared, where the military would, if they were a high-value target, would take them out over the ocean in a helicopter and disappear them. So it got a bad reputation. But this kind of thing happens in all countries, like in the U.S. I mean, whatever happened to these approximately 125 or something like that people that were close associates of Bill and Hillary Clinton, who, oddly enough, committed suicide. So politics is a dirty business. I don't know why people get involved in it or support candidates. Although I've got to say, with the recent election we had in the U.S., I'm so glad that Kamala didn't win. And I say Kamala because her name, you'll recall she had her 2 stepdaughters explaining to the Democratic Convention the proper way to pronounce her name. I still don't know what she prefers, but if you're Spanish speaking, Kamala. Well, there's 3 cognates to that. You can say Kamala, which means how bad. That's a good one. Or you can say Kamala, which means burn her. Or you can say Kamala, which means bed her, because she has a reputation as being something of a hoe. Anyway, she's going to fade from the scene, never to rise again, because she's stupid and evil and it's just a cesspit of bad ideas. She's an actual communist. Well, she's never said she was a communist, but she was by far the furthest left member of the Senate, further left than Bernie Sanders. So we'll never hear from her again, or whoever that person, awful person was that was running for her VP. So they say that now we're going to have morning in America again. Well, yeah, Trump is better from that point of view. But you got to remember, morning only lasts for 6 hours.
Yeah. And one positive thing I talk about, whatever about, and we talked with Michael Yon there, excellent conversation on Trump and to what extent he's our friend or not, or part of the system. But the very fact that the country managed to vote in a majority for an alternative to the madness, wokeness of the Democrats in itself is somewhat positive.
Yeah, but is it? Because about half the country supported these idiots with their actually criminal and evil ideas. So I look at it, yes, I'm very glad that she didn't win. But half the country supports the Democrats and Kamala. So that's not good. I mean, the very fact that somebody that's that substandard could have been nominated for one of the two parties, that's really disturbing.
Well, I think that's a symptom of our time. The fact that, it seems like almost no political party can get somebody that seems to actually have a brain. And a point that I've brought up often was, people think that Kamala or Biden, they're just these idiot people. Do you think that that's maybe underestimating their shrewdness or the way that they've gotten to that level?
Yeah, well, maybe you're asking indirectly, who really runs the U.S. government? Who's the power behind the throne? And I don't even know if there is any particular power behind the throne. One thing you can say is the deep state. And to define the deep state, it's people that are in and around and associated with the government, and they can be top people in the agencies, top generals, top admirals, top bureaucrats, top corporate guys that suck at the tit of the state, academics that support it intellectually, entertainers that, so these are the people that, and I'm not sure, I don't think it's a conspiracy where they get together and talk about these things, although these people at the World Economic Forum and Bilderberg and all that do get together. But these people basically share a worldview, they share philosophical views, they have the same economic interests, they go to the same clubs, they go to the same parties. So that's kind of the generalized power behind the throne. But you got to ask yourself, well, what are they doing putting people as degraded as Kamala and what's his name, Timmy Boy, and that other fellow, Waltz. What's going on here? I don't know. A sign of a decrepit and collapsing empire, because the U.S. actually is a multicultural domestic empire at this point. It's not 50, 60, 70 years ago, the United States shared values together. Everybody, wished each other Merry Christmas, and the 4th of July was something that people believed in, and the values that you saw in Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver, those 1950s sitcoms. It was, the religious values were all there. That's all washed away at this point.
Doug, when we think about that, let's say America as a declining empire, there was a point that was brought up the other day at lunch that maybe it would have been preferable or even better in some ways for Kamala to win, to bring in the fiscal and monetary regime behind the Democrats, go full MMT retard, and actually hasten a collapse and the ability to rebuild. What do you think about that idea?
Well, yeah, I've thought about that because I'm a bear on the economy, the amount of money printing, especially that's gone on, the increasing level of taxes. which have become very onerous, the ever increasing and extremely onerous level of regulation, yeah, it's going to bring on a collapse. I call it the Greater Depression. It's going to be much worse, much longer lasting, and much different than the unpleasantness of 1929 to 1946. And so based on what you said, yeah, maybe as Lenin said, the worse it gets, the better it gets. Yeah, okay, I can buy that and let the bad things over the next 4 years happen on the Democrats' watch. But the problem is that if the Democrats, the collectivists, the genuine statists were elected, they would cement themselves in office. Washington is, starting from the Obama regime through the Biden regime, and the baby Bush was totally worthless. Washington is filled with Jacobins at this point. And so if you gave them 4 more years at this point, there's no telling how they would cement themselves in office. And maybe you'd never get them out. And especially with the mass migration that's occurring into the U.S., these are people that don't share American values, that have been actually recruited with free food, free housing, free medical, and that doesn't draw the best people, that draws the worst people. Unlike the immigrants that came to the U.S. up until the 1950s, they were on their own. I mean, nobody gave them anything. So that drew the best and the brightest. Now we're drawing the poorest and the worst because of this. So with these people coming in, they would vote their pocketbooks, which means vote for the Democrats. So I understand what you're saying about maybe it would have been better for them to blow things up and then start anew. But you'd be starting anew with a different kind of country than we had 50 years ago. And maybe if things blew up, people would say, God, we need somebody to save us, somebody to straighten this mess out. And that's where you get a strong man. That's where you get your Hitler or your Stalin or your Mao. So listen, I'll take 4 years of relatively good times. Yeah, I'm pretty happy that Trump won, considering the alternative.
Mm-hmm. You know, Michael Yon brought up the idea that words really matter. He didn't call this a migration, he called it an invasion. Do you think that's more accurate?
Yeah, I love that little ditty that came out of this. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. It's poetic. Mm-hmm. Look, it's apparently true. I haven't visited these various towns of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people that have been inundated with aliens. And these people are aliens. Different language, different culture, different religion, different traditions. And just who brought these people there? What are they doing there? I mean, it used to be that if you, as a libertarian, I'm all for open borders and free migration if people pay their own way. But these people are being, like the 200,000 or more Somalis that were imported to the U.S. after that war. Who the hell paid for these people and transplanted them in Minneapolis? I mean, this is insane. I mean, yeah, it's not a good situation. I make a joke. Of course, Canada's got the same problem where you've got 40 million people up there, and they get about 1.5 million migrants every year. In their case, it's almost all from the subcontinent. They're mostly Pakistanis. And so Canada's being transformed from what it used to be to someplace different, and everybody hates white males these days. So, hey, world changes. But 100 years from now, who knows what it'll be like? 1,000 years from now, who knows? Who cares? So, I kind of, I just watch the kaleidoscope, and yeah.
Well, and Michael went through the receipts. Basically, it's somewhat hiding in plain sight that this in America is driven by the State Department and it's driven by the government. All the NGOs have been enabled, supported, and in Ireland it's the exact same. It is driven by our puppeticians.
Yeah.
Now, yes, they're simply the butt puppets of the EU Commission and the UN. True, it's being driven by our governments.
Yeah.
Which is kind of astonishing in a way that
But it's not. You shouldn't be surprised. Why?
Because the kind of people that want to go into politics are people that want to control other people, think they know best. I'll order your life for you. I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you how much you have to pay in taxes and all that. So government is like a magnet for criminal personalities. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised at how stupid the average person is that he actually supports Tweedledee or Tweedledum in every election.
Doug, you mentioned that this, let's say, depression, once this economic bubble blows up, that this could be worse than the 1920s, 1930s, and longer lasting. Is that because of the size of this everything bubble?
Yes, this is the biggest financial bubble in history. I mean, a huge amount of debt has been created. And some people say, well, don't worry, we owe it to ourselves. No, we don't. Some people owe it to other people. And the average guy, certainly in the US and Canada, but in a lot of other countries, has huge credit card debt and student loan debt and automobile debt. I mean, automobiles now cost actually more than houses used to cost. So, that's they're going to be turned into serfs, the average person. And they're promoting and have been promoting this idea of a guaranteed annual income, universal basic income, whatever they want to call it. And the average person that's buried with all these obligations and is commuting and can't keep his head above water, he's thinking, a lot of these people are, you know what, 3 hots and a cot and free entertainment and some walking around money to hang out at Starbucks and look at my iPhone all day, that sounds pretty good. So this is a far cry from the values of Western civilization in the past, which are all being washed away. I think it's a pity. But life goes on. And like I said, I don't know what's next. Listen, the good news, maybe Elon Musk is right. We go to Mars, conquer the other planets. I mean, hey, anything can happen. I like to be optimistic. I'm not gloom and doomy about this. It's free entertainment, kind of free anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is certainly a theater or a pantomime at this stage as we watch it.
Yeah.
So a point was made about, from the Mavericks actually, I mentioned I'm a stand and fight person in Ireland, though I believe Ireland is in the crosshairs of some significant challenges perhaps Michael went through. But the idea of going away, not running away, not giving up the fight, but going to a safe haven, if you like, maybe down here in the bottom of South America, where you can continue to better support people who are on the ground and pushing back. Mm-hmm. I thought it was quite elegant idea rather than just a sense of running away, to guard your wealth, to be somewhere where you still can influence. You've got bank accounts, you've got money, you haven't been cancelled and shut down. What do you think of that idea?
No, I think it's great. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. I mean, look, when the Soviets took over Russia in 1917, if you stuck around, you were an idiot. You got what you deserved. When the Nazis took over Germany in 1933, you'd get out of town unless you were really stupid. Same thing in China, 1947, and Vietnam in 1975. I can give you 20 countries where when the tidal wave is rolling in, you can't resist a tidal wave, and you shouldn't try to. I mean, screw those people. I mean, yeah, get out of Dodge when it's obvious what's going on.
Doug, it seems like, right after the election, gold and silver obviously took a pretty big hit. Obviously, Trump being very pro Bitcoin, that was very good for that. That was good for the dollar, good for the major indices. Zooming out, though,
But they didn't. But they didn't take a hit. I mean,
well,
gold had just hit an all-time nominal high, not in real terms, but 2,800. Now it's back at 2,700. So that's like a random fluctuation, really.
again, kind of zooming out to gain this perspective, nothing has really changed fundamentally for gold and silver. All the fundamental drivers seem to be intact. So again, going back to that same idea, asking what would have to change for you to change your mind on the precious metals?
Well, okay. I like to buy things when they're cheap, and gold or silver aren't really cheap anymore. I mean, look, it's not like when in the early 70s, it's 50 years ago, gold was $45, $50 an ounce. It was pretty obvious it was cheap. I've been buying gold for my whole adult life. Never sold an ounce, quite frankly. So it's not cheap anymore. It's been a great place for savings, and it's still a great place for savings, but it's not a great speculation anymore. It may turn out to double or triple, but that's only double or triple. And look, we've gotten like, what have we gotten like? We've gotten like a 50, 60, 70 to 1 shot over the course of a lifetime. So the higher something goes, the less I like it, not the more I like it. And gold does not produce more wealth like a corporation. It does or should. It's a store of value. So yeah, at some point, I hope I can dump all of my gold stocks. That's a different thing from gold, very different. But what's my signal going to be? Well, if Slime and Newspeak still exist, those two big American news magazines, and The Economist in London, if they still exist and they have a picture of a golden bear tearing apart the New York Stock Exchange, that's going to be the bell ringing, and I will jump back into U.S. stocks. Mm-hmm. But until then, the stock market's really, really expensive now, getting more expensive. So I don't want any part in it, quite frankly.
For gold bull markets in the past,
yeah.
Let's say, for example, a rate cutting cycle is pointed at to be the catalyst for the miners to perform.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard that many times.
Yeah.
Is that the same this time, or are there too many distractions?
Yeah, well, there's lots of distractions, and the whole world is greatly over-financialized. I mean, financial stocks that basically do nothing but shuffle money around. I mean, insurance companies and brokers and banks and companies of that nature, they add up to, 20% of the value of the stock market? That is just insane. I mean, banking should just be a business that allows you to keep money safely and write checks against it and make loans against time deposits that people want interest on. It should be a really simple, minor business.
What a concept.
Yeah, but with these central banks, which all should be abolished, printing money up by the trillions and trillions every year, 2 trillion a year in the case of the U.S., of course, it's becoming more of a moving paper fantasy. So it's all going to blow up at some point, at which point we'll be very happy to have a bunch of gold and silver coins. That'll be great, but I'm not optimistic about this merry-go-round continuing indefinitely. It's just that when it stops, it's going to be so unpleasant and inconvenient for people. There's going to be massive unemployment because people think they're wealthier than they really are. Hey, look, I borrow $1 million. Hey, I feel pretty good. I got $1 million in the bank, and I can live really high off the hog for some time. But when it's gone, I've got My standard, I can artificially inflate my standard of living by borrowing money. But when I pay it back, I'm going to suffer a very real decrease in my standard of living, in addition to a bankruptcy. So, where I'm unhappy because I can't give it back, and the idiot that lent it to me is unhappy because he ain't getting it back either. And where'd the money go? It's been dissipated in high living. So, yeah, this depression is going to be quite unpleasant. People living in cities that make a living out of shuffling papers, when that paycheck doesn't come in, they still got debt obligations. Well, what's going to happen to them and to the people that they're obligated? Who's going to ship food into the cities for that? You know, I'm not. If I'm in the food business, I'm not shipping food into Chicago where they're rioting and they can't pay for the goddamn food. Things are just going to get worse. Anyway, this is hard. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. But like I said, I want to watch this stuff on my widescreen down here in South America, not out my front window in the U.S.
But I wanted to go back to the gold miners question.
Yeah. Oh,
What makes this time different? And are we actually looking at a bull market here
Well,
for the miners specifically?
Well, gold mining is a crappy industry. It's a 19th century choo-choo train industry. It's not like it was in the old days, where if you found a gold mine, you were set for life. Now you find a gold deposit, which is hard to do and costs millions of dollars. Your troubles have just started. So I'm not enamored with mining companies. They're burning matches, generally speaking. But I think since at this point they're so cheap, absolutely relative to the regular stock market or most things, and even relative to historically. I mean, there's classes of them, and there's lots of them. There are thousands of them. People don't realize how many mining companies, so-called, there are. Thousands is the answer, and most of them are crap. But at some point, the public is going to decide, God, I ought to own some gold, and maybe I should own a gold mine too. And their market caps are so teeny weeny. I mean, they're not big caps, they're not small caps, they're not micro caps. They're nano caps, and some are pico caps. So that a little bit of buying. These things regularly go, in the past, over the past 50 years, 5 bull markets, the average crappy gold stock, and on average they are all crappy, went upwards 10 to 1, sometimes 100 to 1. I've personally, believe it or not, had two that went 1,000 to 1. Didn't buy it exactly at the bottom, didn't sell exactly at the top, but they were really good to me. So that's how volatile they are. So the answer to the question is, yeah, I'm getting so tired of holding them since the peak in 2011. That was the last peak, incidentally. They've been just going nowhere since then. Yeah, they're going to have another kick at the cat. They'll go 10 to 1, and I'll make a lot of money. And then I got to figure out, well, what am I going to do with it? I already got plenty of money, but I got to fill those idle hours somehow.
Well, I think you are heading to a hard stop, Doug, I believe. I've lost track of the time. It's been fascinating, but I'm guessing we're close.
let's take a look.
Yeah.
I got 5 minutes.
Okay, we got 5 minutes to wrap up. The key points, key insights, key thoughts for this Armageddon that's approaching for the average person who's only beginning to become aware that they need to start preparing and changing what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of off color, but I guess I'd say keep your pecker hard and your powder dry, and the world will turn.
Mm-hmm. Doug, is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners to think about or to keep in focus?
Yeah, don't depend on your government. Recognize that your government is your enemy, actually, and make sure you learn more skills, take in more knowledge. Uh, don't do things that you might consider morally wrong, because you'll regret it in the future, and it always comes back to bite you. These are homilies that you've heard from so many places, but it's good advice. Put aside some gold and silver, learn to speculate, because the markets in general are going to be going up and down like an elevator with a lunatic at the controls, which is a good analogy. So that's about all that I can say to sum it up, I think.
So for anybody that wants more of Doug's info, that's all available at Doug Casey's Take, where you do regular conversations. Anywhere else you'd like to point to, Doug?
Yeah, internationalman.com, where I write an article every week, which is pretty radical, and a bunch of other guys do that are all excellent. So, and it's free, internationalman.com. And I like to promote my 3 novels, Speculator, Drug Lord, and Assassin, following the pilgrim's progress of our hero, Charles Knight, as he advances from one unjustly besmirched occupation to one that's even more besmirched, to something even worse. Everybody thinks assassins are bad. Well, it all depends. And the next one, if it ever gets done, is called Terrorist, where our hero is accused of being a terrorist. I've got lots of thoughts on the nature of terrorism. And after that is Warlord, where he goes back to Africa, which is where Speculator takes place, because he's involved in a bush war there and a gold mine and so forth. So hold on, read those 3, and hold on for Terrorist and a Warlord, where we show a warlord can be a good guy. And then it gets really wild and woolly in the last 2 in the series.
Well, I know I'm waiting for the next one, Terrorist, because I read the first 3, and people can check out our conversation about those 3 and the ideas that are brought up within them on our last interview together.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate that.
Doug, thank you so much for your time today. It's a real pleasure, sir.
My pleasure.
A privilege, Doug. Delighted. Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll do it, folks. And I often take the opportunity to remind people of the importance of gold in your portfolio, whether it's pension or savings. And the world we're heading into in the coming years, there'll be a certain amount of turmoil. And it's very important in my mind, and certainly Doug validates that. He had huge success from being onto the gold thing decades ago. So while it's higher in value now, and it's not so much a speculation, it's more a store of wealth and a safe store against what's probably coming, sadly. So the links are down below. Got a special with Pure Gold in the City of London. They're the best in the business, I believe. And got a special offer, free consultation and 6 or 12 months storage for free. Though many people do like to have physical possession. If you don't hold it, you don't own it, as the phrase goes. But in any case, the offer is there. You can talk to their expert consultants, not just on precious metals, but on general macroeconomics and financial investment. Don't listen to me, listen to approved advisors. But I know what I've done myself. So that'll do it. Good luck till next time.